who has helped provide the truth to us and promote the truth, even as we are just beset with loads and ways of lies, is Dinesh D'Souza. And he has a brand new book out now called The Big Lie. Of course, we interviewed Dinesh D'Souza a year ago at the Republican National Convention, and this was when the documentary, et cetera, came out regarding Hillary's America. And Dinesh D'Souza, it's a pleasure and a privilege to have you on the show with us this morning. How are you, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing great and very excited about the new book. As you know, in the Hillary movie and book of last year, we took on the race card, the whole idea that the Republicans and the right were the party of racism. We showed that the opposite was true. And here I take on the fascism card, because ever since Trump's election, this has been the kind of meta story or big theme which is used to justify all this crazy, violent, extremist behavior on the left. They're acting as if they're fighting Hitler in the 1930s, and that's a big lie.
Yes, and that is persistent. And I realize, we just saw the ratings for Rachel Maddow's show skyrocketing, and I explained to people that that's because there's a certain level of retreat on the part of the left. They have to find some way, some place to go to pacify themselves because their lies are drying up, and the only place they can find a reservoir of lies is there on MSNBC. And
Maddow says, I've got to go back and I've got to read the speeches of Hitler from the early 1930s, because that is our situation now. Now, here's the weird thing. In a sense that she's right, but not about Trump, because the real sort of fascism that we see today, we see, ironically, marching under the banner of anti-fascism. If you look at these so-called Antifa or anti-fascists who show up in cities to disrupt, they show up on campuses to drive conservative speakers off the campus. They're dressed in black, they wear masks, they carry weapons. Their goal is intimidation, terrorism, to sort of scare people and drive them out of the public square. Well, this is exactly what Mussolini's black shirts and Hitler's brown shirts did, the only difference being that those guys admitted that they were fascists, whereas these guys pretend to be anti-fascists.
Well, yes, and not only in their efforts on the street, but even in terms of policy, where, as you point out, they're anti-free speech, anti-capitalist, anti-religious liberty, all of these things that really actually are remnant. And listen, we don't want to throw around the Nazi term just gratuitously, but the fact of the matter is, if they're going to start using it against us and lie about it, then we're going to show them the error of their ways.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that these terms should not be thrown around carelessly, but that's why I throw them around carefully. Right. Hitler called himself a National Socialist. When he took over the German Workers' Party, he changed the name to the National Socialist German Workers because he wanted to emphasize that socialism was the core of fascism. Mussolini was a lifelong socialist. In fact, he was the most famous Marxist in Italy when he started the fascist party and established the world's first fascist regime. So Hitler and Mussolini saw themselves as on the left. It's really only after World War II when the progressives came to power in America, in the academy, in the media, and at that time, of course, fascism totally stained by the reputation of Holocaust, and so the progressives said, you know what, let's try to move fascism from the left-wing column, where it's always belonged, into the right-wing column so we can tar our political adversaries and call them fascists.
It's interesting, Dinesh D'Souza, that we've also seen all of this playing out on a more primitive level in Venezuela. Because, really, in the end, the sham election, which is something that actually, in my opinion, was being promoted by the news media here in the United States with Hillary's, where they were trying to basically coerce and push an outcome through polling, through fake news, through lies and everything else. We saw it actually work in Venezuela.
That's a very good point, because the sort of signature of the Nazis and of fascists was to use quasi-legal mechanisms to come to power. That was true of Mussolini's March on Rome in 1922. It was true of Hitler in 1933. It's true of Venezuela. And it's also true of the Democratic Party. They will rig the Democratic primary without hesitation. And so the very things that they accuse Trump of doing hypothetically, like did he collude with Russia, they have done in actuality. And another point to make is that ultimately fascism is about the centralized state. Right-wingers can't be fascists. If you go to the extreme right, you're going to go to more and more individual rights and smaller government. So the extreme point on the right end of the spectrum is, in a sense, anarchy. But the extreme of the left end of the spectrum is the all-powerful collectivist state.
Well, one of the premier conservative intellectuals and communicators, Dinesh D'Souza, with a brand new book out called The Big Lie. You folks need to check this out. It's DineshD'Souza.com. We can follow. We'll put his Twitter page up there as well as his website. And, sir, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I had the privilege of actually meeting you in person in Cleveland, and we appreciated you stopping by. We appreciate your hard work, and we appreciate your thorough work in telling the truth. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much.
All right, that is Dinesh D'Souza. It's Common Sense Radio.